Meet the Transfers Texas Tech Red Raiders edition. This is a sneaky good transfer class. When we were doing our transfer rankings, you, among other people on our little panel, were adamant that we needed to reconsider Texas Tech because Carr and I were pretty low on them at first in the rankings.
Isn't
The,
this what they do? They do the
that is
guns up.
that is what they do. Texas Tech 17th on our list of the top 20 transfer classes in the country. I had them 24th, so they would not have been part of this exercise if they were if it was just up to my list. Where did you have Texas Tech in your rankings?
13th, 14th, somewhere in that
Wow,
range.
Riley Davis is high on the Red Raiders. It's a good class. We'll go player by player and do some role projecting for each of these guys. I have some questions for you at the top here, though. First off, just the players themselves: Elijah Hawkins, JT Toppen, Federico, and Kevin Overton. It's a really good group. My first question to you: Grant McCasland and Texas Tech basketball, did they do what they tried to do with this transfer class?
I would think so. I mean, they upgraded their point guard position. I think Hawkins is like, if you want someone as a table setter to get the other guards and wings, which I believe is a strength for this team, get them involved, get them their touches, then yeah, Hawkins is a lot more efficient, a lot more stable than Pop Isaacs. They got the star in the front court and JT Toppin, who's I believe is being compensated like one that seemed to be the chatter was that they were able to, pry him away from the bigger brand, the Texas Longhorns. Yeah, I think they did a good job bolstering their front court as well with Federico and kind of taking a flyer on Kevin Overton, who just had a really solid freshman year for a tournament team in Drake.
Yeah. So to me, what they tried to do is like rebuild a locker room, which, depending on what you heard last year behind the scene, like Texas Tech had a unique locker room last season. Pop Isaacs leaves, he goes to Creighton, and I think you're rebuilding like the roster just to try and get things back on track. Pop Isaacs was also their best player, so I don't necessarily think it was a great thing to lose him, but you had to do it. Let me ask you this just quickly: does Texas Tech have like FU money? Because in my head they do. Am I off on that?
I kind of think they do. That I do remember seeing some stuff online that the Longhorn faithful was a bit upset that they got outbid for Toppin.
Yeah. So I think they have serious money, and I would compare it, at least what I've heard and what I believe to be true. I think they have like Kansas State level basketball money, which is really, really high. That's my interpretation. If you think otherwise, let me know. But
I didn't realize it was that high. I mean, it wouldn't be
why?
surprising. Just you say everything in like the everything in Texas and Oklahoma. Just assume it's oil money. If you don't
Yeah.
know what else, just say it's oil money.
I could be wrong, but if they do have that type of money, then I would say no, they did not do what they set out to do. Because to me, you need like 3 starter level guys to rebuild this. I think you got a couple guys who are going to start, probably 3. I think JT Toppin's great. I do have questions with every other guy on this list, and I compare it to Kansas State's group where, you got a Chor who's great. You got Coleman Hawkins, who's great. You got Big Oo, who wasn't great, but he's a big time prospect. And you got Doug McDaniel, who's super productive. If I was like throwing those 4 in a group with these 4, I think Kansas State has 4 of the 5 best players. To me, like maybe you spent a bunch of money. You only got like one proven great Big 12 level starter out of it. And for that reason, I got to say no.
I don't know if you're dissing Elijah Hawkins or JT Toppin, but I'm upset at either.
Okay. All right. We'll get to that. What could they have done better? I feel like we just kind of alluded to it. I think they needed at least one more star for this to be a great class.
Yeah, this is where on one hand, it feels like this program has a ceiling on it right now. And I know that sounds a little crazy because they made the NCAA title game 5 years ago. So when they had Chris Beard, who at the time was viewed as like a top 3 coach in the sport, maybe McCaslin can get him back to that point. At the same time, it's still Texas Tech basketball. And like, that's why even with the money, I don't know if it's the type of program that's going to be capable of reeling in 3 stars out of a transfer class. I think the main thing that stuck out to me was just wanting a more productive big than Federico. He's someone I think can fill a role, but he is, I don't know, far from a star, far from like a all conference quality big.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. We'll go player by player in a moment. It just I feel like I'm being harsh, but they also have 2 scholarships open. Like according to the updated roster I've seen, they have 11 guys on the team. So like if you spend all your budget and there's still 2 openings, I never like it when good teams leave spots open. Like, find, even if it's a role player, find something to help your program. So I really believe in Grant McCaslin. Just this class left a little bit to be desired for me. So let's move on. We're gonna do meet the players. We'll go player by player here. We will start with Federico. Federico, anytime you can get a big who averaged 4 and 5 for Pitt, you have to do it, right? What's your breakdown for Federico? You could give him a role from either star, starter, role player, or non-factor. What do you think Federico will be?
He's an unspectacular starter. He'll catch lobs, he'll block some shots. He's a bit skinny. I've watched a decent amount of him when he was at Pitt. There were times where he looked like very bouncy and not an enforcer would be a bridge too far for his defensive aptitude, but he had some moments defensively. At the same time, like talking to our friend Tristan Freeman, he was always on the lower side of Federico to where he wasn't always seeing what I saw. And he watched every single game, whereas I didn't, which anytime a fan is like, yeah, he's fine. We're not that upset to lose him. That sort of puts a damper on the prospects.
Yeah, look, I'm no Pitt basketball expert, but I watched enough of them because I liked watching Bub Carrington last year to know that like Federico was on the floor a lot, and I never, ever, literally ever felt like he was making a positive impact. I like, call it what you want. I would say in the Big Ten, I've seen liabilities at center. I've watched Madi Sissoko like hamper good basketball teams for years. To me, Federico is like that, but maybe a little worse. I don't think he can be a starter on a good basketball team. Maybe that's harsh, but like I think he's going to start on this team. But if I'm a Texas Tech basketball fan and you bring in a guy that averaged 4 and 5 in the ACC, I'm not buying what you're selling. And not just that, man. Go through some of the game logs from last year. Very first game of the season against North Carolina A&T. Federico goes for 13 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks. I have a few follow-up questions for you, Riley. After the first game of the season, how many times the rest of the year did he score 13 points again?
0.
0. How many times the rest of the season did he notch 4 blocks again?
Once.
0. How many times again did he notch 10 rebounds?
0.
Once. One time. That's horrible, man. He's a starting center the whole season. Like, I don't get it. His numbers got worse from the season before to this season. I just
41% free throw shooter though.
Yay. I would not want this to be my starting center. And I think by default, let me ask, could they play JT Toppen at the 5, or do we think they're going to play the two together?
You probably, as you're hashing this out, I don't know why Federico is better in my mind than he is in real life. I think he played well against Armando Bacot once, and that's skewing my view of him because I swear he's not as bad as you're making him out to be. That being said, you probably want to, like in crunch time, you probably want to play Toppin at the 5 and Darian Williams at the 4.
Yeah, that's what I would want to do as well. And I think there are good guard types off the bench that are way better basketball players than Federico. So for the sake of assigning a role, I'm going to call Federico a role player. He's a role player that might start some games. Next on the list is, let's go Kevin Overton next. Off the bench is the projection, I think, on paper. But again, if we slide this down and go small, I think Overton could end up a starter. He averaged 11 points a game last season for Drake, shot 34% from 3. What role do you project, and what do you make of him?
I have him as a rotation. Seems like a multi-year piece. Again, you could do a lot worse when you're filling out your bench than getting a 6'5". I'll put shooter in quotation marks from now. He made 59 of them, just wasn't at the best clip, as you said, but was just a freshman on a tournament team. I like the addition if you can get him for a couple years. But yeah, rotation.
I love this ad. I am going to say, I want to make sure I'm right on this and I'm not missing a name or something. I think he's a starter on this team because I think they're going to move JT Toppen to the 5. And I think that the most logical guy to move in is Overton. And you slide Williams down, like you said. I love this ad because he is a multi-year guy. Like, coming off a freshman season at Drake where Drake was good and Drake was also playing nepotism ball. I don't think we know what he is yet. He might be really good, and he was just asked to like stand and watch Tucker DeVries do everything. If you get 3 years of this guy for Texas Tech, I think he could be a 3-year starter if it all goes well.
I love nepotism ball. I think that's one of the best terms you've coined.
I mean, it's okay. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think it worked
True.
enough for Drake, but I believe in Overton. Next on the list is a guy in Elijah Hawkins that he's a good player. He's a very good player. One of the best assist guys in the country. He started at Minnesota all of last season. Minnesota overachieved in large part because Elijah Hawkins was really good. Scored 9.5 points, 7.5 assists. Truly one of the best floor general types in the entire sport. He also shot 36% from three. I'd assume. I mean, we think they're going to give him the ball, and he has the keys to this team as the starting point guard. But what do you make of his game?
Yeah, I have him as a starter. I love Elijah Hawkins. I think this was the biggest surprise for me just with Texas Tech as a whole last year. They were top 30 offense in the country, top 50 in assist rate. I was expecting like an ugly slug it out eyesore that McCaslin made his bread and butter with at North Texas. But they had some actual guards with talent last year. I think I hinted at the start, but Hawkins can set guys like Chance McMillan up. He can, feed Kerwin Walton on some driving kicks or open threes. I think I mean, you might tear this apart, but I think Hawkins is like a little bit of an underrated defender. Like he can get you some steals. He's pesky. I mean, I know he's what, like 5'7", so maybe he gets bullied a little bit too. But yeah, I've always loved how quick he is. How like even I watched a decent amount of him when he was at Howard because I covered the MEAC for 2 years for the Almanac. Even when he was at Howard, I was like, this dude has a dribble package that could translate to the high majors. He's just small.
Yeah, he's smart, and I think he translated better up a level from Howard to Minnesota than I expected. Like he really was one of the best point guards in the Big Ten last season. The assist numbers went up going from Howard to Minnesota. I feel like it's rare that you see that. He's had great shooting seasons, like shot 47% as a sophomore at Howard, 36% from three on four attempts as a junior at Minnesota. Look, he's clearly a high major starter. He's clearly an elite floor general type. What I will say is this. I don't think he's a bad defender, but if like one of the first things off him is like he's pesky, that's not how I envision like good Texas Tech teams.
Yeah, fair.
I don't view him as like a plus defender by any means. He's a good steals guy because he's smart, but you don't feel like he's locking down opposing point guards. Um, the one big skepticism point I have with him is this sounds like pure hater, but Carter, my co-host, has been telling me this for years. He has some really juiced up assist numbers. Not that like people are cooking the books for him, but like he will have a wide open layup and he will kick for an assist. And there's nothing wrong with that. That means he's unselfish and really good and he sees things. But like last season, at least at Minnesota, he was trying to get like 12 assists a game. Like he would pass up things that could help his team to try and get 12 assists a game. And I think the other guys in this team are going to love playing with him. I think Chance McMillan and Darion Williams and Toppen are all going to benefit hugely from playing with him. I think you'll see their scoring numbers go up. But I do have some questions. Like, there's a difference between like Tyler Kolek and Braden Smith, who are getting assists because it's the right decision every time, versus a guy who's on an okay team just out to get his assist numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how that squares on this group. And then I think the big headliner with this team is JT Toppen. JT Toppen is the star. That's what everybody tells me. I think he is one of the best forwards in the entire sport of college basketball. What do you project for him this season?
Yeah, I have him as a star as well. I think he sort of gets made out to be a better athlete than he is. He's pretty explosive, but it's you. I think he had 33 dunks last year. I would have honestly expected that to be in the 40s or 50s. I don't know. I wouldn't say he's an effortless leaper, but he's athletic enough and can get you some flashy, like catch some lobs on, make a flashy play. Where I'm honestly most impressed is just his rebounding. Incredible offensive rebounder. In 11 tier A games for KenPom, his offensive rebounding rate didn't dip at all for the rest of the year, which I think is really important. Defensive rebounding is good as well. And yeah, that's going to keep him on the court. He's really good on scoring on putbacks, good enough shooter. And I think he can do a little bit with the ball in his hands too, off of like 2 to 3 dribbles. So yeah, I know y'all talked about the top sophomores in the country. CBK report had him ranked as their top sophomore. I'm not that high on him, but I think he's probably a top 5 sophomore in the sport.
I'm going to say he's a starter, or excuse me, a star. I'm right on the verge, though. Like, I kind of want to say he's just a good starter and not a star. I don't think there's like all American potential here. And I guess it depends on what you define a star as. Like he certainly could be an all Big 12 player.
Hmm.
This might not make sense to you, or maybe it will, but what he reminds me of this upcoming season where we're projecting for him, it reminds me of a player who's a totally different archetype than him. Do you remember when Arthur Kaluma was returning to Creighton for his second year? And there were a lot of like list oriented things of like that dude is so clearly going to break out, and then it just didn't happen. He was the same guy. I'm worried we could have that happen with JT.
You're scaring me a little bit. I had not considered that. In the words of Taylor Swift, you've seen this film before. You didn't like the ending. I did not like that ending, and I hate that I see a potential for that ending here. That's a great point, G. I just hope my guy Toppen can transcend that.
I'm rooting for him. I think he's good, and he's a completely different archetype. But we're going up a competition level, and everybody expects his numbers to be better. That would scare me a little. Now there's a lot of upside if he adds some shooting stuff, which he did show signs of last year. Like he could be one of the best players in the sport. The defensive stuff is special. Like he's going to be an elite defender right away. 2 blocks a game, 1 steal last year. And again, he is a guy who will really benefit from playing with Elijah Hawkins. So in that case, it should boost his numbers. But just that's one I'm bookmarking for now. Of like, are we so sure? Everybody seems to run to the finish line, sprint to it to be like, that guy's a breakout superstar. And sometimes it doesn't always come together. There are some variables at play here. Okay, quick speed round. There's your transfer class for Texas Tech. Who's the best player at the end of the season from this group?
This Toppen pretty easily for me.
It's Toppen for me too. You could say Elijah Hawkins, and I wouldn't hate it if you were high on him, but I think it's got to be Toppen. Who improves the most from the beginning to the end of the season?
Got to be Overton.
Love that shout. I think it also could be Toppen. Like I think we
Yeah.
could see a world where like maybe he struggles in the non-con, or maybe even the beginning of Big 12 play of like, oh my God, I gotta play these monsters every night now. And then
Hmm.
by the end of the season, he gets it and it clicks. But I do think Overton, like maybe he starts outside of the starting lineup. He ends up starting midway through the season and it all works. Uh Give me a hot take. We need a transfer-based hot take from these 4 guys for Texas Tech.
JT Toppen, first round pick in the 2025 draft. Works his way in there.
I hope it happens. I'm rooting for that to happen. Just to really put a bow on this negativity exercise for me. Elijah Hawkins will not be the best guard on this team. It's going to be a completely unexpected name, Riley.
If it's not Chance McMillan, Kerwin Walton, you a fan of
Chris
either of those enough?
Christian Anderson is going to be the best guard on this team. Are you familiar with Christian Anderson's game?
I am not. Enlighten me.
I refer to Christian Anderson as baby Trae Young. Christian Anderson was a Juwan Howard commit at Michigan. I believe he committed in 7th grade. And I had to sit and watch for 6 years knowing this kid's coming. Christian Anderson, like, he's a German kid. He's played with the German team for FIBA stuff, and he was like competition level, didn't play with an elite high school for forever. He transferred to Oak Hill this past season. His numbers at Oak Hill have been stupid. Like, he's been the leading scorer on Oak Hill. He's been insane. You watch the tape, he's like a 46% shooter from 3. He's absurdly efficient. He's super tiny, but he just shoots from like 5 feet beyond the 3-point line and goes in all the time. It looks like you're watching Trae Young. I don't know. Like, obviously, the physicality stuff is there, and he's not the pedigree recruit that Trae Young was. But if his scoring translates, I think there's a world where he's the best guard on this team. And that's partially me being really high on Christian. I don't think you can play Hawkins and Christian together, but I'm going to land on there's a world where Christian Anderson is special, and you can't hold him back behind Elijah Hawkins.
I'll get in the lab and get back to you, but you know,
I'm gonna send you the tape.
I like your enthusiasm.
I'm gonna send you the tape. That was less negative than I thought it would be. If you want to see the others, we had Texas Tech 17th on our transfer rankings for the transfer classes. There's 20 other videos going up on the channel, 3 per day, every day this week. Go check them out. Car, you know what I love about you?
That I'm handsome?
You're reliable. I can count on you. You know, honestly, you remind me of Aaron Henry a little bit. Remember when, like, you know, their back was against the wall, nothing was going right, and man just showed up every day. He didn't make excuses. There were no problems. There were just solutions.
Sounds like me.
That's you. And it also reminds me of Duncan Mechanical Solutions, because if you're looking for quality furnace repair, look no further than the heating and air experts that you can trust. Comfort and quality are their standard. They're an HVAC company that serves Northeast Indiana and Southern Michigan, whether it's heating and air conditioning, plumbing, kitchen and bath remodeling, or emergency services when you need them most. Duncan Mechanical Solutions has reliable service that you can count on. Cart, remember when your basement almost exploded?
I remember when my basement almost exploded. I remember when my furnace itself was acting funny. I remember when my AC was acting funny. I wish I had Duncan in my back pocket. I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been anywhere in northern Indiana or southern Michigan that hasn't been perfectly cool or perfectly warm, depending on when the day called for. And that's because of Duncan Mechanical Solutions. They are the presenting sponsor for the month of July. Shout out to Duncan Mechanical Solutions. Go to duncanmechanicalsolutions.com to learn more.